You have to be at a place where you're like, okay, this is the only thing that matters. You know, recovery and treatment and getting better is what matters most. And I got to that place.
Welcome to Recoverycast, where we share authentic stories from influential voices about the joys of life in mental health and addiction recovery, and the journeys that led us here.
We tell our stories because we do not heal in isolation.
I'm Brittany Baynard.
And I'm Tom Farley.
On today's episode, we're joined by the inspiring Hunter Michael Shepard, a content creator and mental health advocate known for his raw honesty and empowering messages on sobriety, healing, and self-discovery. Through his journey of overcoming addiction and embracing personal growth, Hunter has built a community rooted in vulnerability, resilience, and radical self-acceptance. His content is a powerful mix of truth, humor, and heart, reminding others that recovery is not just possible, it's life-changing. Get ready for a conversation about sobriety, getting help, mental health, and the power of choosing yourself every single day.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Welcome to Recoverycast. Hunter Michael Shepard, welcome. So excited to have you here. We're going to have a great conversation. You're coming here from California. Welcome to Wisconsin. It gets a lot colder.
Sorry about that,
you know, be thankful. So anyway, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. Well, let's just start in. You know, I can't wait to hear your story. But so paint us a picture of, you know, what life was like kind of in the depths of addiction for you. Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on that, but like, there it is.
Yeah. So I am from a place called the Mid-Ohio Valley. It's where the Ohio River runs in between Ohio and West Virginia. It's very commonly known as the most opioid affected place in America.
Really?
West Virginia has the highest overdose rates. Ohio, I think, is third, but it's based on per capita. You know, and actually today is Black Balloon Day. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it's the day where we honor people that have passed away from overdoses. And that's like, you know, it really holds a special place to me because, you know, half the people that I grew up with have passed away from this, you know. Wow. But for me, I was a full-blown IV, fentanyl, and meth addict. It started out with, you know, weed, prescription Adderall, alcohol. It progressed to, you know, I would mix all different kinds of substances, LSD, mushrooms, ecstasy, heroin, meth. I would mix everything, literally. And it got to a point where, at the end, I was just I would literally mix meth and fentanyl together in the same shot. And then
how old are you at this time?
So I started using when I was 12.
Okay.
I used heroin for the first time at 16 years old.
You were drinking too?
Yeah. I feel like that's like the most common way to start out. You know, I feel like it's so common for, you know, early teens to experiment with weed and alcohol, but also I was prescribed to, I was prescribed to Adderall at 12 years old. So I would mix all of that stuff together. And, by the time I was 16, I used heroin for the first time. By the time I was 18, I was addicted to a drug called Spice. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was like, it was like a synthetic drug, which was bad. I mean, that was one of the worst drugs I ever used.
Is it like legally sold? Or?
At the time it was. I got in a lot of trouble when I was younger. So I was on juvenile parole and probation. So, and at the time that drug couldn't be tested, you know, it wouldn't show up on a drug test. So, and you could buy it over the counter. So, you know, people were smoking it.
Right.
And I actually didn't realize how addictive it was. Huh. And then at 19 years old, I would say 19 to 20, I got into heroin and fentanyl, like pretty heavily. And 21, I used meth for the first time. And then between 21 and 23, I tried to get sober a handful of times, and it didn't work. And at 23, I decided to get sober.
What was that moment like at 23? All that stuff you just rolled through. I was like, oh my gosh, like and you're not a baby, but like you were just a kid. You were just a kid going through all that stuff.
Yeah.
So at 24, what is that? What happened then?
Growing up in West Virginia, it's not just one of the, most opioid affected places. It's also one of the poorest places in America. People lacking healthcare there. There's not a lot of opportunity there. But thankfully, I don't come from a wealthy family, but I come from, a working class family. And thankfully, my mom had health insurance to help me. Right.
Yeah.
And between 21 and 23, I was stuck in this cycle of, I would get high. I would go to rehab willingly. I would ask to go to rehab. Right. I would say, please help me. And then my parents didn't really know where to look or who to turn to for help. So they would go on Google or they would, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they would find it however they could. And I would end up going to these places that weren't really like great places. They weren't really verified, and they said that they did certain things that they actually didn't. And no, I mean, it's half fault to them and half fault to me, but it just wouldn't work. I would go to these places that they looked nice and they sounded nice, but they never held me accountable to like actually working a program of recovery.
Yeah. The resources out there about places that just weren't available in general. Like you can Google a place, like you say, it looks nice. This sounds nice. Like they've got kind of a good paragraph overview, but like, are they specializing in what I need treatment for? Like what's this?
One, the thing that's great about Recovery.com is that they are verified resources. You guys know these people and you research them and you talk to their team and all of that, right? But at the time, I don't even know if it was available at that time, Recovery.com. But so I kept going to these places that essentially lied and sounded nice, but I would go there and then I would come home and I would be right back in the mix of, the same friends. I didn't know about recovery. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't have a community, and I would relapse. And then, so I literally went through this cycle of rehab, relapse, rehab, relapse. And I went to 6 treatment centers in 2 years.
Sorry, were any of them giving you like tools? Like, did they have like, I don't know, like DBT, like any of these different methods to teach you, or is kind of like, we'll get you sober, we'll keep you here.
Yeah.
And then when you get out, like.
They don't teach the difference between treatment and recovery. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And just getting somebody sober and then like teaching them how to live once they get out, or any of these places helping you?
And also, the real problem is, and I find that a lot of that stuff happens once you get to like the PHP, IOP, and OP level of care. That's where the magic really happens, in my opinion. And that's why whenever I talk to people, I'm like, you should really be committing to like 120 days of treatment, bare minimum 90, right? Like that's like bare minimum. And I would go to these 28-day programs, and there would be a lot of people there. It wasn't individualized. I would get detoxed, which was amazing. I needed that. That saved my life, but they weren't getting really into like the clinical aspect of it. It was more of like, hey, come here and detox and stabilize and you'll be fine. I eventually got to a program where I was able to I stayed. So I actually went through the full continuum of care 2 different times. I got 5 months of sobriety and things were good, but I still didn't understand what recovery was. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't work the 12 steps. And I literally just stayed sober through being in treatment. And I went back home. I'm 5 months sober. My girlfriend breaks up with me. I lose my job. My parents are, angry at me. And there's just a lot of like chaos. And somebody showed up and they had drugs on them. And it was like a perfect storm to relapse, So I relapsed for the last time in that moment. And it was really bad. It was really
because
really
it sounded like you were about as isolated and lonely as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: like the first time you went, your parents found a place and you went. Compared to this last time, how much more educated about what you were going through were you?
I definitely was. I was educated on treatment for sure, you know,
by the last time. Yeah.
And what happened was my parents were educated.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
my parents, which were the ones who were researching this, in the moment, I was out of my mind. I couldn't find treatment for myself, even if I wanted to, you know? Yeah, my parents finally got to a point where they were like, hold on, we're going to start asking like the questions that matter. Like, you know, what are you actually going to do to help him stay sober outside of treatment, you know? But I relapsed. 3 weeks later, I lost 45 pounds. I was a meth user, so I would compulsively pick at my skin.
Yeah.
So my whole body was covered in these like scab marks just everywhere. And I think I slept maybe 3 days in 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
I was very dehydrated. I was very unwell.
You lost all that weight in the 3 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. And then a girl poisoned me, trying to kill me. And
hold on, you can't glaze over that.
Yeah,
okay.
they'll do that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we've thought about it, but like, okay,
Yeah.
Can you dive into that a little bit? That's kind of your turning point. Okay,
that was my turning point.
Okay,
yeah. She gave me something called Flocka. It's like a synthetic drug. It's a research chemical, and it's like, I don't know if you heard like the stories back, you know, a couple of years ago where people were like attacking people and biting their faces off and stuff
absolutely.
like that.
Bath salts.
But even stronger.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like even worse than bath salts. It was bad. And it was crystals, which meth are crystals. So she put it into the meth I was using. I had no idea. And I did it. I remember and this is quite graphic, but I sucked the drugs into the needle and I put it in my arm. And I looked up as I was doing it and she said, I fucking hate you. I fucking hate you. I did it and I blacked out. And for 3 days, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was. Yeah, it was bad.
Who got you out of that situation?
My daughter's mom showed up to the hotel room that these people left me in. And because we would use drugs together. So she showed up and I was in a very bad state. And she called my parents like instantly. And this is all on video as well. Like her like finding me in the hotel room when I was in psychosis. And in the video, she's going like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Do you need me to like call your parents? And all I could say was like, help me, call my mom, help me.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing I knew how to say. My parents showed up. They took me to the hospital and the hospital was like, oh, we need to put him in the psych ward. My parents are like, he doesn't need to go to a psych ward. He needs to go to a detox center, you know? So my parents actually took me home and they helped me like, essentially like detox for 3 days until I came out of psychosis. And I was literally 23 years old sleeping in between my parents because I was so scared and I didn't know what was going on. I was hallucinating and seeing and hearing and feeling bad things. It was scary.
It's amazing. Like, what about like, help me, I need help. Do you go, this person's need psychotic help? Like they're asking for help.
Yeah.
Like what's psychotic about that?
I was checking out social medias and stuff. And one thing I really admire, it is the hard stuff to talk about, but I appreciate your vulnerability in showing those pictures. I saw the video. I think one of the first things I saw checking out your socials was, I clicked on it first because it's a cute picture of this little kid. Yeah. And I was like, and I watched that video and it's your story. It starts with, who would think that this little child would become a drug addict? And I feel like every single person who has been affected by addiction in their life can relate to that first statement and that adorable child, because nobody thinks nobody has that dream or that wish for themselves or for anybody else. And then the next one is you in that Flame t-shirt. And I knew that Flame Hot Topic t-shirt. Like, I'm like, every kid I knew had that with like these little spike necklaces or the bead. And I'm just like, that was like, those are the people I know. Like I relate, like I felt that, and nobody in the progression, just everything that you went through until you were 23 years old, which is still so young. And the pictures of that last day. Yeah. But then zoom, like that next picture is like of you now, and then just like living life traveling, going places. Like it was incredible. I was like speechless. Showed it to him, just like silent, speechless. Yeah. It was so encouraging and so amazing. I can't imagine, like, you know, you had the video to show it, but like, I can't imagine those feelings and emotions going through that. But that last day, you have that there to like see and recognize and know that moment was there. What are these times like getting out of that? You see that you just don't want that for yourself anymore. What in treatment, you know, you did the step down, and that seems like that is honestly the best way to do it. You can't just go to residential. You need to know how to incorporate and like get back into life and living that sober life and kind of curate your environment. How did you do that?
Yeah, I think I was like beat to a point of willingness, you know, like, and before I thought that I knew everything, you know, I thought I was in control of, you know, my life and my program and all of that. And I finally arrived at a place where I would listen to what other people had to say. And I took direction from people that were, you know, sober and had been sober, that were telling me how to stay sober, you know? Yeah, it comes down to willingness, you know? A lot of the conversations that I have with people are, you know, people that reach out to me. A lot of them will be like, oh, I can't because of this and that. And, you know, there's always some kind of like excuse or justification or whatever. But, you know, you have to be at a place where you're like, okay, this is the only thing that matters. You know, recovery and treatment and getting better is what matters most. And I got to that place.
It's fear, you know, like I have this unknown, like what's this like? The only thing I know is this life that I have now. And you asked me to do something completely different, and unknown. And I have high levels of fear, and you're asking me to, in the midst of all that fear, you're asking me to be completely vulnerable. That's a hard thing to ask anyone like that. Like
even when you're in like the worst part of your life,
like all this fear and like, and you got to be vulnerable, and you don't believe it. Like that sounds horrible to me until you start to heal, and you're like, okay, it does start to get better. Let me ask you this though. I just that post one last time. The resiliency you see in that post is incredible. But all the times you came out of treatment, you came out and you saw this environment that was very familiar and you were put back into. But this last time you saw something else, a new environment of recovery, of connection, people talking about, you know, this thing that we have in common. You know, did you see that at first, or did that frighten you? Like, but you had to see that because you went down a different path.
Yeah. I never went back home.
Yeah. Okay.
You know? I have for like extended periods of time to visit, but I waited until I knew that I was good. You know, I think I had 6 months plus of sobriety, you know, and a sponsor and meetings. And what was different about going back home was I knew how to find meetings, even in the place, you know, that I used for all that time. And, you know, would go to meetings and connect with people in recovery. That was a big difference.
Did you ever think you'd have a community of recovery people instead of a community of the people prior and enjoy it?
In my hometown, it was a lot of the same people that I used to.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? It shocks you. Like, and you're all looking at each other like, you too? You're like, yeah.
I'm glad to see you here than anywhere else.
Yeah. One of my childhood best friends that we did everything together. I mean, we did a lot of bad stuff together, but he's sober now, and I just celebrated 7 years. He's about to celebrate 7 years.
Congratulations.
And, and we work together. We do interventions together and transports and case management and all of that together.
Wow. What's that like on the other side, helping people?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But you know what's amazing about it though? Because I, you know, being some in recovery too, and is that, you know, it's not like I've learned all this and I want to help you and give you this knowledge. It's not, I still need to heal. I need you to help me heal. And so maybe you need a little bit more and I can help you with that. But I still need you on my journey as well. And that's the beauty of that's being of service is it's not one-sided. It's two ways.
For sure.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the things you're doing for the recovery community.
When I was I think I was like 2 or 3 weeks sober, I started to like document my journey on social media. And since then that has grown to like, I have over 1.5 million followers between all platforms. I think in the last 90 days, I had one video that got 89 million views last month, but Instagram didn't even register it. So aside from that, I also had another 90 million views in the last 90 days.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. So, I've been able to reach people around the world. I have partnered with facilities literally in every corner of the earth, and have done interventions everywhere, transports. I've worked with programs in England and South Africa and Thailand and all over America. I've also been able to put together a ton of resources for people that don't have, let's say health insurance.
Right.
I help everybody with Medicaid, or whether they have a little bit of money, like I help everybody. I don't turn anybody away. I'll always give people resources. So it's amazing, to be honest.
Tell me about that. Like, so it isn't just like, I want to help you and I got this place that I can get you into. That's not it. It's like, what's your story? Let me figure out what the best place for you is and find that place. So how do you get that? How do you connect a person to the right place?
A lot of asking questions and getting to know people, but also it was years and years of getting to know different places.
Yes.
And actually going to these places and getting to know the owners and the clinicians and, seeing what they provide, like actually like going there and seeing it myself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And also a lot of piecing together resources, like the Medicaid resources. That's hard to piece together, because even in some states there's still no resources. It's unfortunate, but there's a lot of places that people really struggle to get help. But I've spent a lot of time talking to other people who help people to put those resources together. It's just a lot of time and effort and questions and conversations, And
it's not that like, one place is better than the other. It's just that they're all good. It's just that everyone and their addiction or their mental health issues are they're different.
Yeah.
And so where is the best place for that and to get into that? It's just, that's how the process is.
Yeah.
So
working internationally, what are some things that you notice in treatment centers versus the US and outside of the US? Just give me a general assessment on your view of the treatment industry, or just like the benefits of, I don't know, like it is cheaper to go other places for treatment, but there's got to be some downsides because you come back and you don't have that like care support.
Even if you're like, actually, especially if you're traveling to a different country to access treatment, I would recommend staying there for an extended period of time. Like if you're in England and you're going to South Africa, I would recommend staying there for 60 days at least. You know what I mean? Or if you're, American, you're going to Thailand for treatment, stay there for 60 days at least, like bare minimum. And I think that's what's really amazing about, you can say whatever about our healthcare system in America. And it is flawed in a lot of ways, but because it's set up the way that it is, we also are very progressive in how we structure things and how we treat people. And here, the recommendation is bare minimum 90 days. So, anywhere you go, I don't care where it is, commit to a longer period of time.
Yeah. Why is the standard outside the US more 30 days?
Because it's based off of a cash pay model and not an insurance model.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the UK, for example, the only length of treatment that insurance will cover is I believe it's 28 days. And like, for example, South Africa, you get 21 days of addiction treatment a year and 21 days of mental health treatment a year. So it's all really structured off of that. Which most places it's mostly based off of cash pay.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by Recovery.com. It's a place where anyone can find mental health or addiction treatment options specific to them. You can filter by location, price, insurance coverage, therapy type, mental health condition, levels of care, and so much more. Recovery.com is the place to find mental health or addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere. Let me take a little detour here. Talk to me a little bit, because you mentioned it. A fascinating subject we haven't talked too much about on this podcast is the intervention kind of process. Like what, in my family, our interventions were like really not very effective. There was that one scene in The Sopranos that ended up in a fight. Yeah. That was more like, that was familiar to me. But tell me, but if they can be amazingly productive, but I'm sure you have some amazing stories about that, as well as some learning moments too.
Yeah, the model that I follow is the invitational model.
Yeah.
So I'll really it takes some planning. It's multiple weeks of planning to really understand like the family dynamics and maybe who should be there and who shouldn't be there for the intervention. Preparing letters. And it's kind of, look, I've always been a salesman, my whole life, whether that was good things or bad things. And, I essentially, an intervention.
Skill's a skill, man.
Yeah. An intervention is selling somebody on coming to treatment, and I'm gifted with the ability to kind of lay it out and say, and also be able to counter all the reasons, I can't because of this.
Made that excuse, yeah.
I'm like, hey, look, I know everything. And I lay it out for him and I say, hey, look, here's the reasons why you should go. So it takes a lot of planning and preparing. I've also been parts of interventions that were more of like an emergency situation where somebody was in a bad way and needed to get out of that situation quickly, which takes a little more finesse.
Yeah.
Well, what I love about your story, it's like you talk about selling, treatment, which is like, you gotta, it's really informing people, because people come to treatment with like next to nothing, like they have no agency at all. They just like, where should I go? They've surrendered, but they don't know anything. So part of that is like educating, I'll say, instead of sales. But you also have this life in recovery to show people, like that, like you go here first, but like this is the end. Like this is what you get for doing that. You present both those pictures, and it's amazing.
Well, and people can't really turn around and say, "Oh, you don't get it," to me.
Yeah,
I'm like, well. Actually, I'd probably get it even more. A lot of times I'll relate to people and straight show them my pictures of me when I was an addict and say, hey, look, trust
you
me,
don't get it.
I get it, and I'm not here to judge you or put you down or accuse you of anything. I'm literally here to offer you an opportunity to get better. That's kind of my approach with it, and a lot of times people, maybe they aren't 100% willing, but, I find that if you have somebody that has even 5% willingness to hear what I have to say or a treatment center has to say, and they get there and they get detoxed and they get all this stuff out of their system and they're around people that care about them and that are compassionate and understanding and all of that, it's actually one of the most successful things I've ever seen. Like, often we hear, oh, you have to be 100% willing. How is somebody that is like,
found their favorite thing to
and they're like, they're distorted by, whatever drug they're using. They can't make rational decisions. So, even just getting somebody 5% willingness to at least go.
I like that. Yeah.
Successful.
There's hope in that number.
Yeah.
There's absolutely hope in that number, which is, I think should be like, people should understand that. Like, no, you can get all this. And it's this trajectory. You start off with like, all they want is to be clean and sober. Like this physically, I can't do this anymore. So you sell that. That's a treatment. But then after that, then you start to sell the, like, now do you want to start feeling like a human again? and not being in isolation, and how can you can't say yes to that until you've kind of like, let's get this fixed first.
Yeah.
But then this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Feeling like a human again and being connected and not being in isolation with no fear and all that other stuff that recovery gives you.
And often whenever I go into like a conversation with somebody that's like maybe, let's say, for example, an intervention, I don't go in saying, hey, you have to commit right now to 90 days of treatment. You have to commit to that. It's more like, hey, look, let's at least get you detoxed so that you can like
make a decision
without it being influenced by drugs, like give it 2 weeks and then, let's give it 2 weeks from that.
It's a great way to look at it, because like 90 days just seems like a lot and kind of overwhelming at times. But if you can take it a day, an hour at a time, a couple of weeks.
The addicted mind, like our minds go out, years in advance. And when you say like, you should, think about, going into treatment or being sober, your mind immediately goes like, oh, you want that life? I know what that life looks like. I don't want that. Whatever you have in your mind, it never ends up being that. It's something completely different that you would never imagine in a million years. This life in recovery, like, just look, I mean, like what have you gained? Like you like a lot of times, like particularly in AA, they love, one of the steps is make a inventory of our defects, and okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But that was that guy. That was that addictive guy. Like, I've gained all of this. Can I make an inventory? This is an amazing life.
Without being aware of my addiction, I can quickly become that same person in recovery, just without drugs, if that makes sense. What have I gained? I mean, the most important thing through recovery is that, I've found the ability to live life on life's terms, free from drugs, free from addiction. I think that for me, that was impossible at one point in my life. I would literally use drugs over anything, good or bad. And I was trapped in that. So most importantly, I found freedom from that, Yeah. And, I'm able to be a good son and friend and father and, partner.
Did you ever think that you would be able to be giving somebody that gift of your, like, of yourself? Like, I look at like parents and families and kids that had somebody with an addiction or mental health issue in their life. And then to see that recovered person come back like that, that's such a gift. I didn't think I'd ever be able to give that to them the way they're looking at me now.
Yeah.
That blows me away sometimes.
For sure. My parents specifically always had hope for that, though.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I think got me through, is that I didn't have hope for that for myself, but my family did. My parents especially.
Do people come up to you now and just look at you and go like, what's going on with you? Like, wow. Yeah. Like you're totally different. And like you just said, your parents, wanted to see that, believed that it was it. Now they're seeing it. And other people that you've known a long time didn't think.
Well, where I grew up at is very small. So,
everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. It's like, it's really like that there. And people come up to my parents all the time.
Yeah.
And tell them that, they're proud of me and they follow me. And
that's awesome.
Stuff like that.
That's got to feel real good to them.
My dad calls me at least twice a week and says, oh, I talked to, and honestly, half the time I don't even know who they are. But
wow.
Yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. We can put our parents through hell sometimes.
Oh yeah.
They deserve the good pats on the back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's very true. Yeah. Wow.
Do you ever get people reaching out to you asking like how to help them? Yeah.
Hundreds of messages a day.
Yeah.
Of people from all over, literally hundreds of messages a day.
There's so many things. My mind is going, I get so many questions. So here's a weird one. Like, you do a lot of transportation, getting people like a lot of times after an intervention, it's go time.
I'll literally pack their bag.
Yeah. So what's the car ride like? What does anything have those last moments?
Do you go on food stops?
Them?
Like if,
oh, of course.
Okay, good.
Of course.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what type of person it is, A lot of the people I do interventions on are young people. So I'm very much able to relate to them, and I'll find what kind of music they like. I'll find the stuff they're passionate about. I'll relate to them. I just turned 30. So like, I'm not like too old to not relate to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I build a rapport with them. But also I've had people that are assholes, that, I mean, stuff that I probably shouldn't even share on a podcast, but
we're trying to get viewers here. So please do.
Spill.
Having people on, private jets that are highly entitled and enabled and on drugs. I'm also very straightforward with them and tell them that I'm not there to mess around and I'm just there to get them to treatment,
That's good.
Right.
That's good.
Are you going to be talking about, the hope? Or have you spending the time just getting over the fear, or just that last step? Like you haven't really surrendered as much as you need to. Like,
Well, I also try not to go like against the grain, like let's say somebody is like really giving me a hard time. I literally just say, hey, look, I'm here to just help you. I'm here to get you to treatment safely. And that's the end of it. But a lot of times, I relate to them and tell them, hey, look, I've been here.
Do you follow up with them after they get out?
Oh, yeah. I have people that I've talked to for years.
Yeah.
And also I do case management.
Yeah.
So I'll work with the treatment center. I'll have a weekly check-in with like the individual. I'll be talking to the family. Like it doesn't just stop at intervention and getting them to treatment. It's like a prolonged thing,
You've been sober for 7 years, so you've been in this space for a while. What are some of like the trends that you're seeing, not only in like the treatment space, but like the recovery community space? Like after people are leaving treatment, there's a lot more options available for people to help them continue that care that aren't like necessarily like come to mind when people think of treatment, recovery coaching.
Yeah, I think that recovery coaching is definitely the biggest trend right now. I find that it's kind of, I worry about that because everybody's like a recovery coach now.
It's a Wild West. Yeah, still. It's getting better. Yeah.
It is. Especially in other countries where, like in the UK, they take stuff like that pretty serious. Like you need to be like trained
Licensed
and certified and all these things. Whereas here in the States, it is the Wild West,
Yeah.
I think it's really useful if somebody's actually providing value.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's like, they're kind of like a sober companion, but in a lot of it's virtual most of the time,
Right.
As long as they're sticking true to what they say that they do. But that's definitely the biggest one right now.
Well, one of my favorite things that I like to say about peer support, peer coaching, as well as even sober living too. I love that it's that continuum of care, but I also love that, like when you went away to treatment, always, it was, you went away and now we don't have to worry about you. Thank God you're getting help. But these are things where we continue to heal in the public's eye. People get to see in your community, you healing, because you're with your, support network or at a sober living, and they get to see that. And I think that really is amazing to break down. It needed to break down the stigmas and the fear of people, that are in recovery or have come out of treatment. There's still a lot of fear, out there, and they need to see, you wrote them off. We wrote ourselves off.
Yeah.
But here we are now doing this amazing stuff. Like you.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
And celebrating publicly too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another thing I noticed on some of your socials that I appreciated, and the vulnerability from people being able to share their pictures of like, I just saw one the other day. I think, I can't remember how many years sober she was, maybe like 8 or so. But that before picture and the after picture, it just looked like a completely different person. And she looks glowing now, like absolutely wonderful. Yeah. I love that vulnerability. I love that encouragement for other people to see like, it is so hard down here, but on the other side, it is scary, but it's absolutely beautiful.
And that's why I share like the before and after pictures is like, I think, it just shows like the transformation that's possible.
Yeah. Unfortunately, addiction transformed you and you can transform out of it.
It also helps in shifting that narrative because, we as people, we love the drama.
Mm-hmm.
We love the stories because it makes us like, well, we're not as bad as that person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so we love that. Just look at Netflix. So it's
Mm-hmm.
filled with those kind of, true to life stories, but showing people this life in recovery, this, the other side of somebody that's, there's nothing like the side of a healed human.
And I also want to say, like, I'm somebody that shares the physical transformations a lot.
Yeah.
But also, like, some of the people that suffered the worst from addiction that I know are people that you would never imagine. Like, they're not the person with scabs all over them,
Right.
sitting on the park bench. They're executives or wealthy people or famous people that I've dealt with directly, and, it's not always about the physical transformation, but you got to really, like, spiritually and mentally and emotionally, you can be broken and nobody could ever know.
I've said this before. I mean, it dawned on me, and it was definitely true for my little brother, but for me, I felt the same way. Like, I could be, the way I describe it is, I could be in the middle of a room or a bar, surrounded by people, center of attention, making everyone laugh, and not feel more like I was standing on the surface of the moon. Like, outwardly look, I own it all. Like, I'm making everyone happy, but why do I feel like so alone and isolated?
I feel like that's that internal feeling that leads to all of this stuff in the first place. Yeah.
For sure.
Isolation, that internal isolation, those feelings that kind of lead to the checking out as a kid for ADHD, depression, alcoholism, like the things that kind of started all of it was this weird feeling of being disconnected from everything else around us and not feeling tethered to something, when in reality, everybody was feeling that way. And that's the saddest part. It's like, were we all just feeling this way?
Right.
We all felt this way, huh?
You too?
Everybody around us at this time was just feeling that way. I don't think anybody that hasn't suffered from addiction is different than somebody that has. It was just that thing where all this stuff built up, and that was the ledge you grabbed onto for help. And that was just what was sitting on that ledge.
You coped with it.
Yeah. That was the thing that you coped with. Like, I'm sure there was other ledges around, and that was just the closest one that you had. And the thing that you had, that was, you were just grabbing onto something. And that's why we are no different. Everybody was always going through these things and feeling this way. It was just how we ended up coping with stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another thing I was amazed to me was that the amount of effort I was putting on to put this person out there that I thought everyone wanted to see. And even before that, I learned that my family was putting out this is our family. Isn't this great? Like, but we were all struggling at some little point. So we curated this life. And when I started to think about some of these emotions that I would need to feel human again, like gratitude and rigorous honesty and trust, like, it dawned on me, like, that person that I had created and put out there in the world, how could that person ever be rigorously honest or grateful? Because it wasn't a real person. That's not a real person. Like, that person can't be grateful like my authentic self can be grateful. Like, I was never going to ever feel what that felt like until I gave that up.
Look into that, yeah. You got to sit with yourself for a bit.
Who's this person? I hope everyone likes it. I hope I like them. I don't know. You like me, right, Brett?
Sometimes, no. Yeah. You're able to help and reach out to a lot of people now. And if there was somebody like you back at 19, 20, 24, if you could say something to them to give them hope or encouragement in 5 words or less, what would that be?
I would say there is still hope,
Yeah.
no matter how dark it is, or no matter what you've been through, there is still hope.
And you don't have to go through it alone.
Mm-mm.
That's for sure. You feel like you've got to come up with a solution and do it all yourself, and you don't have any of how would you know?
My own way of thinking and my own choices, got me to the places that I was in.
Yep.
Yes.
You know? Like
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
It's our choice. It's our
you gotta have a good group of people that can guide you and support you. You know? Super important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We tell our stories because we do not heal in isolation. And, it was really wonderful to hear your story. It's a story of resilience, hope, all those things. Not this, like what got you here isn't nearly as amazing as like what I'm seeing now as a story.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. I saw a meme once that I loved. And it was that we are measuring worth completely wrong. We are measuring worth by how successful we are, which is wrong. Somebody can always be more successful, or your success can be fleeting. It's that basically what we should be measuring people's worth is how essential they are to themselves, to their communities, to the people around them. And that's you. You're about as essential as I can never imagine. And I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, wow. Where can we find you? It sounds like most people have found you.
Yeah.
But,
What's your socials?
Yeah, it's Hunter Michael Shepard or Hunter versus Addiction on every platform.
Awesome.
Yeah.
To find more about Hunter Michael Shepard, please look in the description notes and the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us on Recoverycast today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.